Hi, I'm Lori and I love books, and today is day 3 of my 12 blocks of Christmas. I have a little tiny penguin with me today, and these are 12 books that can help you get into this season. Some are still on my TBR and some I've already read, and there's definitely a few I can definitely recommend. So this first one is Nutcracked by Susan Adrian, and a girl named Georgie is playing the part of Clara in the Nutcracker ballet, and while she's playing the part, the magic of the Nutcracker becomes real, and she has to help save the Nutcracker. So it sounds like it'll be an interesting take on a ballet I love. This next one is Skipping Christmas by John Grisham, and it's a couple that decides they want to skip the hassle and the worry and the stress of the holidays, and kind of sounds like a very typical story, but I'm not expecting a typical story by him, so I'm hoping I'll enjoy that one. This next one is a collection of stories and ideas to do during Christmas time, and that's a Christmas Miscellany by Jackman, a Victorian holiday treasury. And so the cover is gorgeous, and so I'm hoping I'll enjoy the inside as much as I'm enjoying the cover of this one. And then this one I found at a Christmas ornament store in Sedona, Arizona. And that is A Cowboy Christmas, An American Tale by Tom Van Dyke. I've never read a book about cowboys before, so I thought this would be a good time to try. This next book is my current read. I'm about halfway through, and it's The Cat Who Came for Christmas by Cleveland Amory. And it's a story about a white cat that is rescued on Christmas Day in New York City by the author. And so this is a true story. And it's about how he and the cat discuss how their new living arrangements, that the cat and he tried to compromise, which means the cat wins. And his schedule has to change to adjust to the cat. He's also a animal rights activist, so that plays a big part of the story as well. And there's a lot of information just about cats in general, about the history of cats, cats throughout history that have been cohabitating with other famous people, different cat names, because he decides he needs to give this cat a name, and this cat's like, yeah, I don't really need a name. It's okay. But they do eventually come up with a name, so I'm hoping the end will be as great as the beginning is. And then here's the picture of the little cat that this book is about. And then these next books are books I have read, and I do recommend very much some of them, and some of them I'm like, well, maybe it's for somebody other than me. So the first one I read earlier this year, and that's Entwined by Heather Dixon. I loved this book. It's a take on the 12 Dancing Princesses. It starts at a Yule Ball, which is where the Christmas and winter comes in. The oldest daughter is supposed to do her first dance at the Yule Ball with her father, the king, but before that can happen, the queen passes away. And so instead of the king staying and helping his daughters work through the mourning process, he decides to go and go join a battle. So he broke the rules first, so the daughters decide they're going to break all the rules too. And as they're breaking the rules, more and more magic's released in the castle, and they have to try to untangle all the magic that's happening around them. There's a lot of different dances described in great detail, a lot of magical elements, just a beautiful story. I definitely plan on rereading this at some point. This next book I have read many times, and that's At the Back of the North Wind by George MacDonald. And this is a story about Little Diamond, who's a young boy who meets the North Wind, and she takes him on different adventures, and as well as going all the way north. And she explains how her job works, how she works, and it's just a very beautiful story. There's some poetry in here that are also supposed to be like songs. Very kind of spiritual, but in a more abstract way. Definitely gives a sense of coldness and winter. And then This next book I found earlier this year, and that's Miracle on 10th Street by Madeline L. Ingle. She wrote the Wrinkle in Time series, which I really enjoyed, so I thought that this was going to be more like fantasies and whimsical, but this is based on Christ mostly, and Mary. There's various poetries, very short stories. It starts with discussing Advent, and then it kind of goes from there. There are a couple stories that are based on the author's personal life. So it is a very interesting read, but maybe not for everybody, but I really enjoyed this. This next one is a book I got in my Grace and Delilah box for December of 2020, and that's The Christmas Angel by Jane Maas, and it's a book that was used to create a Hallmark Channel original movie, which I think I did see the movie, but I only vaguely remember it. But this is basically her family's history of her great-grandfather who is Welsh, and he creates this Christmas angel, and then he gives it to his wife, but he had created it for a previous woman he was enamored with. And basically the Christmas angel gets passed down generation through generation. And so it starts with like letters and journal entries, and then when it gets closer to the author's life, there are more interviews, so it kind of starts kind of sparse and then gets more flesh and more detailed as the story goes on. And then it ends with a very magical note. So it was an interesting read. It was a very easy read. This next book was also an easier read. It's Matchless, A Christmas Story by Gregory Maguire. He was the author of Wicked, which I did read Wicked, and I read this, and I have not liked either of those books. I didn't dislike this book. It just wasn't a book for me. Basically, he takes the story of the little match girl from Hans Christian Andersen fairy tale, and he creates a story kind of around it, but I don't think that they meshed as well as I was expecting. There's a lot of illustrations in this, and plus it is a very beautiful green book for the season. So the book looks pretty. The insides might just not be for me. I just might not be a fan of this author, but somebody out there might enjoy this. And then the next book was the book for the November Children's Classics Club, and that's A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. This is the classic tale of the three ghosts of Christmas visiting Scrooge and helping him grow as a person. So I hadn't read this in many years, but rereading it was definitely magical. I was kind of bawling my eyes out when we got to the Tiny Tim part. But very magical, very beautiful book. And this edition, which is by Puffin Classics, had an introduction where the guy was talking about the fact that you kind of have to be older to appreciate Dickens. And I was in high school made to read Oliver Twist, and so maybe I'll give Dickens a try again now that I am older. Maybe I was just too young for Dickens back in the day. And then this last book is kind of, if you're planning on traveling this time of year, I thought it was charming and delightful, funny, quirky, just kind of an out there kind of book that I wasn't really looking for, but I kind of appreciated that I found. And that's Your Guide to Not Getting M-Worded in a Quaint English Village. This is by Maureen Johnson and Jay Cooper. And it basically says, one, you should go to the Quaint English Village because it's an M-worded village. It talks about the different people you meet there in this village. It talks about the different locations and how those are bad choices to make. There's a couple quizzes in here to see if you'd actually survive in this quaint village. It also goes into a manor that has a labyrinth in it, and I'm like, well, that's probably where I would no longer be able to continue on. And then in the manor itself, it actually has like the kitchen, and just under the kitchen it just says no, just no. So I did find this very funny, very enjoyable. It was also a very simple read with big illustrations and small amount of words, but definitely very charming book. So those are the 12